What is up and welcome back. If you are new here, my name is Justin, and in today's video I'm going to be custom painting a miniature finger skateboard using Posca Markers, as well as putting it together. A little while back on the channel during a live stream, I worked on a handful of different graphics and I got some feedback from the live audience, and out of all of the different designs, this was definitely one of the most popular designs. And the idea came from doing the sticky frog, which is the channel's icon, and I wanted to do a painting of it on the skateboard, but instead of just doing it normal, I wanted it so the colors were dripping off and creating kind of like a face reveal showing the skeleton behind. And I drew this in the app Procreate on iPad. The app Procreate has a handful of 3D models that you can draw directly on that are included with the app, one of them being a skateboard. So I went ahead and loaded it up and threw on the graphic that I drew, and I ended up wanting to resize it just to make the face a little bit bigger and take up the whole board. And I think it looked pretty cool with everything and all the colors kind of exploding off of the face. So I decided to go with a little bit more zoomed out view. With the design in place, how I liked it, I went ahead and added the 3D model's trucks and wheels. And on the top of the grip tape, I added a small sticky frog grip tape art. With the design all worked out, all that's left to do is transfer it over to a board. And I'm using some blank boards that I picked up, a handful of these from Teak tuning. These are just blank 5-ply maple boards, and these are for the most part pretty nice and overall sanded, but there are some parts of the board that could use a little bit extra sanding to make them a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that before I paint the board. Using some 150 grit sandpaper, I'm just going to go over the rails of the board and just make sure that they have an equal rounding on the board part as well as the pockets on the top and bottom. And for the tail and nose, I decided to sand a little bit more off of the tail just to make the tail a little bit shorter, as well as make sure that the tail and nose edges are also equally round. And overall, it makes the board look a little bit cleaner just by sanding it a little bit more. I'm using some acrylic gesso on the bottom of the board, kind of as a primer for where I'm going to paint the graphic. This helps the paint stick to the board. And I also like to thin out the gesso to make it really thin so it doesn't leave the brush marks as best as possible. However, it does leave a little bit, and I just let it completely dry before coming back with some 300 or 600 grit sandpaper to make it extra smooth. With the 2 thin coats of gesso on the board and sanded smooth, I'm going to move on to painting the board. And I also made sure to get the gesso off the side of the board just because it's a little bit harder to remove once it's fully dry. So I'm going to start with sketching the design on the board and placing it kind of where I want it, just like in the 3D model. And I'm just putting in some rough lines. I'm not going to make it super detailed or accurate just because I am going to end up coming back over this and painting it. These are more of just guidelines for when I'm painting the board. With the design all laid out in pencil, I'm going to come back with some Posca paint markers. And I found that using this kind of paint marker is really easy to make a really thin and even layer. I have used acrylic paint markers from other brands as well as actual acrylic paint before, and I just found that it is not as smooth. I like that Posca markers have a variety of really nice colors to pick from, and the ink in the markers, while it is nice and thin and it goes down super smooth, has a good amount of coverage. And I found that doing, for the most part, 1 coat with the darker colors is pretty good. And if for the lighter colors and to get really, really nice coverage, doing 2 coats is definitely plenty. But with like the darker colors, with the black color, it goes down 1 layer is definitely enough to get full coverage. If you want to check out any of the supplies that I use in this video, I'll put product links in the video description down below. With all of the lighter colors on the board, I like to come in with the black last just because it is a little bit harder to cover up mistakes if I do make a mistake with the black marker, and covering up the lighter marker is a lot easier. And I'm coming back in with all the details using a PC1M for the small details and to make sure that it also has some super clean lines. After cleaning up all the lines, I'm going to come back with a X-Acto knife and clean up the edges just by scraping the edge. And I decided to add some top ply art, so I'm going to use some gesso on the top ply, the sticky name tag on here, come back with some glow-in-the-dark yellow and turquoise for the name tag, and I'm going to come back with the black for the outline. With the outline added, I'm going to come back and also add some drips. Since this is a hand-painted one-of-a-kind board, I'm going to go ahead and put the one-of-one on the top ply. And I also ended up sanding down this board enough to make it go from a 34 millimeter, and I measured it, and it is now a 33.5 millimeter. So I went ahead and added that as well. And with everything on the board, I'm going to go ahead and seal it all up with some clear coat. For the first coat, I like to go over with a really light coat, and it doesn't make the smoothest as far as the surface goes, but I let it completely dry and then come back and wet sand it. And I found that this part of the process of wet sanding the very first coat to make sure that everything's nice and smooth before adding final coats makes the overall end result a lot smoother and cleaner and just really nice and glossy. I ended up adding 2 additional coats for the final clear coat for a total of 3 coats of paint, and I think it came out pretty nice and glossy. And if I wanted to make it even nicer, I could come back with maybe some 1200 wet grip paper and sand it one more time and possibly do some polish and wax on here. But I think for what it is, I'm going to leave it as is, just because I do plan on skating this board and seshing it. But overall, I really like the enamel paint because it gives the clear coat a really nice good amount of protection, as well as also makes the side plies look really nice. You can see all the individual side plies. And overall, really nice smooth paint job. With everything painted and dried, I'm going to go ahead and grip the board. I'm using a small amount of clear grip tape over the top ply art to create kind of like a grip gap so I can see the grip art. And then the rest of it, I'm going to use some foam grip tape. My favorite part of this grip tape is got the satisfying extra peel. This grip tape is a little harder to cut out than foam grip tape is, and I found the best technique is just using a hobby blade and going directly down on the edge of the board at an angle, and it cuts out pretty clean. And I'm coming back with some regular 1mm foam grip tape. And a quick tip for gripping with foam grip tape is to peel the one side and start on one side and then peel and push towards the other side. This will help avoid the pockets peeling up over time just because the foam grip will not be stretched out. And I'm just using a file in downwards direction to cut out the rest of the foam grip. With the foam all filed, I clean it up and I come back with some tape just to clean up the edges and any of the extra adhesive. For the front of the board, I wanted to try something a little bit different rather than just putting a solid piece of foam grip on. And I had this white grip tape from Teak Tuning that is also 1mm. So I decided to go ahead and do alternating white and black stripes. With all the pieces of grip on the board, all that's left to do is cut it out. And that is usually one of my favorite parts of setting up a new board. But with all of the lines on this board, it was extra satisfying cutting them all out and making a clean line. I really like how the foam grip tape came out with all the lines. The alternating white and black design looks really unique, and overall I think it looks really clean. And I like that all the plies are super visible on the board now. I'm going to go ahead and poke some holes for the hardware. And to make the holes on the top a little bit bigger, I like to use a Phillips screwdriver head and go back and forth. With the holes in the foam grip tape, I'm going to go ahead and put the screws in and install the trucks. With the trucks on the board, I'm going to go ahead and swap out the bushings. The bushings that come on these are kind of like an O-ring or a donut style bushing with the washers on the top and bottom. And I tend to prefer, for most of my setups, these Teak tuning bubble bushings. These are in the 61A durometer, which is, I believe, the soft to medium hardness. There's one, I think, option that is softer, which would be the 51A. And then I think there's also 71A, which would be harder. These should be a little bit more responsive than what I'm used to. I've been using the 51As on most of my other setups. And I really like the color on these. These were a black and kind of like a lime green swirl, which I think matches the board really nicely. And they were on Teak Tuning sale, which if you saw on one of my previous unboxing videos from Teak Tuning, I had a huge haul of the bubble bushings as well as some other products from them. I bought all on the sale, and I bought so much stuff from that sale, especially with the bushings. Teak Tuning actually ended up sending a promo code for the channel and for myself to use for all future purchases. And if you do buy anything over on Teak Tuning, you can use the code STICKYFB for an additional 10% off of your order at checkout. For the wheels, I'm using some Abstract Conical 7.5 wheels in the pink and purple swirl color. I also really like the white wheels on the setup. I thought they looked really clean, but I ended up going with the purple and pink swirls. And these Abstract Redemption wheels are some of my new favorite wheels that I've been using for the past few months. I really like the quality of the bearings as well as the shape of the wheels and the overall grip and squeak of them. And of course the colors are really wild, which also makes the colors of the graphics pop even more. With the board all together, all that's left to do is a kickflip test. And it passes the kickflip test. Overall, I'm really happy with how this setup came out. And I really like how the board feels and performs. It's surprising how much of a difference it makes just to do a little bit of sanding and also adding the clear coat. The sound and feel of the pop are completely different on this board compared to an identical board without the enamel. And overall, it just has a little bit more crispy and kind of more poppy feel to it, or sound. This was the first time trying to make a design with the different color grips, and I actually really like the contrast of the two different colors. And then the clear part where the grip design goes into and kind of almost drips into the bottom part of the foam grip tape on the bottom and the tail. That about wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, make sure to hit the thumbs up button as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for when I post my newest videos. Also make sure to check out the channel for more fingerboarding content as well as upgrades, tricks, tips, and obstacle DIYs. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, peace.